Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for Investing in Your 85%. My name is Dawn, and I'm the Curriculum and Instruction Manager here at the Van Andel Institute for Education. And with me is Brent Raby. He's our presenter for today. He's the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning at the West Aurora School District. So glad to have you, Brent, and we're really looking forward to your presentation. We have Robin also in the background. She's there. If you run into any issues or questions, feel free to reach out to her in the chat. Hi there, Robin.
Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us today.
Excellent. And I believe Brent's slides are being put in the chat box as well. So you can have the resources and everything that he talks about today is in the chat box right now. See that there. And this webinar will also be recorded for future sharing and watching. Today's webinar is sponsored by Blue Apple Projects. These are project-based learning units that engage students, teach content your teachers need to teach, all while making the world a better place. If you're looking to start bringing authentic learning into your classrooms, this is a great place to start. And because you're watching the webinar, you can receive 10% off your next project using the code webinar at blueappleteacher.org. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Brent.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks for having me today. I know this is a really busy time with people, for people in general, because I know there's a lot going on with trying to get students scheduled for next year, and hiring and recruiting and all those good things. So that's kind of the focus of today's presentation. Is really we're going to talk about three things. The first thing I want to talk about is identity-based approach and how you think about that in terms of recruitment and retention strategies. So really, before we get started, it's always kind of nice to know who's in the room. So I think we're going to put up a survey real quick, and if you guys could just take that and take a couple seconds to fill that in.
All right, Brent, they're still coming in. I'll give it probably 5 more seconds, and then we'll close it out. All right, so we have 67% other and 33% curriculum administrator, and zeros for the rest.
All right. Really, I probably should tell you guys a little bit about my background now that we know who's in the room. So I'm the assistant superintendent here at West Aurora, which is just outside of the city of Chicago. On any given time over the past couple of years, since we've used a lot of our ESSER money to do some hiring and recruitment, but at any given year, we hire anywhere between 65 to 150-ish is probably the most that we've hired in one year, teachers or administrators. And I can tell you that we've done it all different ways, and we've had varying levels of success. But I think one of the things that we've really focused on over the past couple of years is really just talking about how do we invest how do we prioritize our investments. It's funny, I can spend hours and hours and hours, like tomorrow I'll spend 8 hours trying to adopt a core literacy program with a team of people, and we spent 5 or 6 days trying to do that. But we don't put always the same amount of effort into the hiring of the people that we kind of invite into our family, right? And so if you look at private organizations and businesses, about 40% of their total budget goes to personnel and benefits. But when you look at public education, and that's kind of where the title of this presentation is, the research would tell you it's about 80 to 85% of your entire budget goes to salaries. And when we think about that, and especially in the state of Illinois, as we see teacher shortages, and when we see they actually just changed the tenure laws here, we have a very limited amount of time to really figure out if those people are a good fit. So we wanted to really look at that and prioritize it and really think through that. So the other thing is when you think about that amount of money going into salaries, one of the things that kills us is turnover, is that when people do leave the profession, we have to start all over. And we know that there's something about experience within the classroom, being able to balance that and to really think about how they're interacting with our students and the amount of professional learning that it takes to, just for instance, to be an elementary teacher, to be able to teach math, literacy, our community time, science, social studies, trying to do all of that while also balancing needs of students, being ESL students, special education students, and a variety of different other needs. There's a lot of pressure there. And so what we see is that people traditionally leave the profession, and this is kind of a survey that no matter which one you pull up, they basically all kind of say the same thing, is that there's a variety of things that why people leave. And on this list, and when I've done this presentation before, one of the things I usually ask people to do is look at what we can control and what we can't control. And there's limitations to being able to control the amount of money people make, right? There's always balance that. Like, obviously we want to pay as much as we can for teachers and administrators and anyone that works in public education, but we know that we're publicly funded. So there are some things there that we just can't really, we can't do. What we can do is really think about how we recruit, how we bring people in, and we set them up for success with long-term retention strategies. So here's something that I just want, that I wanted you to think about before we get into kind of the nitty-gritty about recruiting and retention. I've worked in quite a few different districts. I've experienced interviews from being a participant, from running them, to all different scenarios. And it's funny because everyone has their own unique way of doing it. And when I think about my own experiences, I kind of group them into these four categories. Like the first one, I would call it more of the chaotic approach, where you can tell like it's not a really systematic plan, where like a posting goes up, someone's hired, usually it's completely building controlled, and if you go from building to building to building within the district, you would see different processes. And every time they have a posting, it's a different process. The second thing I've experienced is an administrator screens the candidates, an interview team creates questions, so everybody submits it and everybody gets a voice in the questions. The questions aren't really structured. They're structured more towards the interview team rather than what the building's looking for. And that interview team selects and recommends to the candidate, to the superintendent, who obviously brings it to the Board of Education. C was probably the most unique approach that I've ever experienced, is that the district office handles all hiring. I'll remember one time where I went into an interview for a building, and I was interviewing at district office, and I only met with district office people, and they hand selected the people from the building to participate, but it really felt like the district was hiring me, and I wasn't really getting a sense as a candidate of what that looked like from a building perspective. And the last way, and this is kind of where I would think that we are as a district, there is a set process for every interview that is consistent and intentional, and that we use this process for all things that we do through interviewing. So today's a little bit about how we got there. And this is one of the things that I always refer to back in our district when we really think about, it doesn't matter if it's school improvement or if it's our retention programs for our teachers, or if it's how we instruct. When I first started 10 years ago in this district, we were a very outcomes-based approach, where we would set goals where we want to see X amount of improvement, we want to see, this type of hiring. And what was disjointed about that was that our focus would change year after year. And our outcomes were always changing, and it really caused us, when people asked us like who we really are, we didn't have a really good answer for that. So one of the things that we've done, especially through our hiring practices, is figure out what is our identity. And when we start referring to ourselves as, this is what it means to be part of the West Aurora family, part of the West Aurora educational group that meets the needs of our students, this is what it takes, and these are the processes we use to hopefully achieve the outcomes. It has changed a lot of the ways that we think, and it has changed a lot of the ways that we just simply operate in a lot of our systems and structures, because it is more identity-based versus outcome-based. And so even though some of our challenges change, who we are as an individual or who we are as a school district never changes. So the one thing that we really need to think about is how connected, and I really always love this image, is because if your recruitment and your retention strategies don't work together, you're going to have issues. You're going to see turnover. You're going to see people leaving because the promises that were made on one side and who you're inviting in and your efforts to retain them, if they don't match and they don't work together, it's going to be like that gear, just the gears independently spinning from each other. So what I like about this image is that they have to work together to move the system forward. And one of the things that we've really thought about is those systems that support our identity, right? And I think one of the things that we know as a school district, like we speak over 50 different languages, we're a world relief hub. We have a significant number of students that are bilingual, et cetera. So we have really tried to work through different organizations like the Golden Apple Foundation to identify students early on in their educational career, especially our former graduates that can go through a program like a student to teacher pipeline, right? And we have supported them. We have partnered with universities to make sure, and we've invited them back to be student teachers and do all their clinicals here. So they are getting on the ground, understanding what it's like to work in West Aurora from the very get-go. We've had a lot of success, I would say. Our numbers of former students who are now educators in our system is significantly high, and it's a really unique thing. The other thing that we've done to really think about our recruitment efforts is to look at our collective bargaining situation differently. In most districts I've worked, when you were hired as a new teacher straight out of college, they tried to push you into what we call bachelor step one. We know that, I was a social studies teacher and I think I applied to 100 different districts, and it seemed like social studies teachers just were everywhere when I was applying, and it was really hard to get a job versus being someone that could teach AP physics or to teach a bilingual classroom. So we understand that all positions in education are not created equal, and there are harder jobs to fill than others. We have worked with our collective bargaining, our teachers union, to really think that through. And what we have here in West Aurora, which has been a benefit, is right of placement on the salary schedule with compensation. And so we can place people based on the priority and the need of the position. So if you're bilingual, if you have your ESL certification, if you're a self-contained special education teacher, if you have a master's in science, where you can teach some of our higher level AP classes, or if you're an autos teacher, those are all positions where we have granted probably more credit or have given them years that they may not have in education to be able to bring them into our system, to be able to match salaries with other neighboring districts when they're looking for a change. It has been probably the number one thing that we've done within our contract that has provided us much more flexibility. And again, it took us some time to get there with our collective bargaining unit to really think about that. And there'll be some other things that I talk about later on in this presentation in terms of professional development, how it even contributes further to that retention aspect of things. So the other thing that we've really thought through, and what I would encourage you to do, is really think about who do you invite into your family. 10 years ago when I first got here and I talked about the hiring process, buildings pretty much were left on their own to do it, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it was really inconsistent because, for instance, our high school had, I think 8 principals in 10 years. So when you think about a high school, and it's a very big high school, it has about 3,500 students, it has over 250 staff members. And when you think about that many different people hiring teachers, it created kind of a mishmash of personalities and belief structures around how we should engage students. And I can honestly say they weren't necessarily all on the same page. Over time, we've really kind of tried to streamline that. Instead of having open like, hey, who's in the interviews? Why don't you submit questions? What we've done is we really sat down and thought about, for every single position that we have in the district, what attitude, skills, and knowledge we want people that are in those positions to have. And then we start building job question banks based on those attitude, skills, and knowledge. And so instead of principals having to go and find or create their own interview questions when they're hiring a teacher or a custodian or an aide or a bus driver for that matter, is that we have banks of questions that are already established that focus on what we are specifically looking for as a district. Granted, they can do some alteration if they have some special things, like if they run a special education self-contained program in their building, or if they're a bilingual hub for us. Obviously, we can adjust those questions a little bit, but for the most part, they're pretty standard. The other thing that we changed is that the interview process. We used to just invite people in. We'd ask like the 10 people that are on the committee who wants to ask which question, and we'd go from there. Now we actually spend 30 to 45 minutes before the interviews even start, and we go question by question by question and create collective commitment about what we want to hear in the answers of those questions. So instead of people having their own personal beliefs about what they're trying to hire or what they would like to see, it's really about what's best for the building or what's best for the district or any of those other positions that we hire. So when we debrief the team, we don't ask them, okay, who did you like? We ask, how did the answers match up to what we were specifically looking for? It's really helped our process because we got out of the individual negotiating in those interview processes based on who they thought they liked the best or who was going to best mesh with their personality. It's really now about the building and really about what the building needs. It's been extremely beneficial because we've seen the number of people that we've kind of invited in and that we've had to release after year one or year two dwindle, because we've been more intentional in the interview process and not have left it up to so much chance. So when we think about retention, so when we do get those people in the door and we think about how we are going to support them doing the really, really hard work that they're doing, we have to make sure that it matches with what we did in recruitment. So if we have these attitude, skills, and knowledge that we want to see in the classroom, we need to reinforce those things in our retention strategies. So before I start talking about it, I'd just like you to take a second to think about, what does your district do with their retention practices? I can tell you in my experience, most people have some sort of mentoring induction program. They have some sort of early new teacher days coming in. But I think, our challenge now, especially with some of the teacher shortages that we're seeing, is how do we get more creative in that? And how do we really make sure that people don't want to leave after we've invested in hiring them? And so here's kind of the fun part. Here's all the things that I get to talk about that we put in over the last 10 years to really think about how we try to support and retain our new teachers within our system. So one of the things, like the first one, I'll start with the one on the right, where we call it administrator academies. And I don't know what it's like where you're at, but in Illinois, every administrator in our district has to every year do an administrator academy. We used to just tell them, hey, go find one online or go find one at the local regional office of education and go take a class and make sure you keep your admin certification current, making sure you have your administrator academy. We've changed that now, and we work with our regional office of education, and we have taken control of the administrator academies, and we make sure that they're connected to what we're doing as a district. Usually we have one of our own staff members who writes the proposal, gets it approved by the Regional Office of Education, then the Illinois State Board of Education, and then in the summer, we do our own administrator academy. So it gets it out of the way for them for their certification, but it also allows us to really focus on who we are as a district, and it allows us, especially when we're hiring new administrators, like this year alone, I think I'm interviewing for 2 principals next week. I've hired 2 executive directors. We did some reshuffling here. I need to get everybody on the same page. These administrator academies allow us to get all administrators on the same page, especially because then when we turn them loose to talk to staff, they're using the district language and they're reinforcing messages that are coming from district office. So it feels like, regardless of which building you work in our district, that it's all cohesive. The other thing that we've done is that we've built, we've really built models over the last few years of what we call residents and curriculum coordinators. Now, residents were teachers that we used some of our ESSER dollars that we pulled out of the classroom, and they had a 2-year experience to get really long-term in-depth professional learning experiences around math, instructional strategies, literacy. We've had residents or in social emotional learning, and now we've turned them back into the classrooms, and these are the same teachers that we're using as mentors. These are the same teachers that we're using as our PLC leads, and they can really reinforce with our new teachers and with some of our more inexperienced teachers about what we're trying to do. So it's embedded people within our buildings that still teach classes, but are there to provide support. So they're not just necessarily relying on district office or our curriculum coordinators who are kind of spread between a bunch of different buildings. The other thing that we did do is that we've created self-reflection learning labs in quite a few of our buildings where we've put, I know this is going to sound crazy, but we've put cameras in the front of the back of the room, we put microphones in the ceilings, and we actually turned it into a recording studio. So teachers can check out these classrooms and they can record themselves either doing a demo lesson for their PLC, or they can do it for their own self-reflection. And we let teachers submit things that they think are really aligned to how we want to instruct students. And we vet those things. We create like a learning library, like almost a YouTube page, where if teachers are struggling with something, they can actually pull up and say, hey, show me how we did this phonics lesson, or show me how a teacher did X, Y, and Z. So they can actually see our staff using the strategies with our students, and then they can replicate that. It's been a good thing. It's relatively new in our system, but it's something that we continue to grow. Some other things that we've done is that we have a mentoring and induction program that actually gives people graduate credit. So if you go through our induction program as a new teacher and you finish out the 2 years, we give you 4 graduate. Well, we call them graduate credits, but they're actually just internal credit hours that move people on the salary schedule. So if you get hired in our district and you go through all this, you're already at a BA +4 with just doing what we asked you to do. Again, they meet monthly. There's a lot that goes into it, but on the flip side of it is those credits don't transfer in any other district. So they're already kind of moving on the salary schedule. They know if they leave that they don't go with them. So it is a little bit built-in motivation to keep people in West Aurora. We do the same thing with we run an institute day, which looks like a national workshop. We offer usually somewhere between 75 to 100 different workshop choices where staff get to pick the things that they really focus, that are still focused on the district, but really will help them. And then we do the same thing with our fall, spring, and summer PD weeks. Again, we'll take a whole week and we'll offer sessions after school that they can get like clock hours for their recertification, or to eventually turn into grad credit here, that are things that they need to focus on. So at multiple points in times in the year, if staff need help, there are opportunities, at least week-long opportunities for them to seek that help out. Over the last 10 years, we've run internal cohorts. We've done it in 2 different ways, but the bottom line is they're completely free for our staff members. We need more ESL certified staff. My goal is to get everybody on staff ESL certified, so we will pay for their ESL certification. The benefit of that is that they sign commitments if they go through one of our cohort that they have to stay with the district for X amount of years, or they have to repay that. It also contributes to their salary movement on the salary schedule. The other thing is that these cohorts have allowed us, our own teachers, have been the ones selected to teach the courses through the university. So we get to embed our own language, especially around culturally responsive teaching in these cohorts. So we get to deliver a lot of messages. So they're not going out and taking random graduate credits. They're really taking courses that help us provide more flexibility in the teaching staff and are really focused on what we're trying to do. The same thing is true with the micro-credentials. The micro-credentials, they basically take 15 courses and they get 4 internal graduate credits, again, that move them on the salary schedule, that are not linked up to any college or university. But again, our teachers teach them. They have action learning built into them. It has been probably one of the most popular things that we do. And we actually give people, like you can kind of see the feathers, our mascot, or not our mascot, but our school name is the Blackhawks, named after Chief Blackhawk. So we stay with that feather concept, and we give them feathers for every time that they earn them. And so they put them up in their room, and it's also kind of an internal support system. So people can say like, hey, I saw you got the assessment one. I'm really struggling in this. How can I get better? And it just kind of builds in those like safe conversations for our staff members, because I remember when I was a new teacher, I never knew who to ask. The other thing that we've done is that we've tried to take back our institute days. Our institute days, like I said, are full blown. You know, we offer 100 to 150 different workshops during those days. But the one thing that we will not do anymore is do what I would consider like training needs. We have a ton of computer programs in our system. We use Google, we use Apple, we use Schoology. We do some things around cybersecurity, Nearpod, you name it, we probably have it. So we've built self-paced online classes that teachers can go through and demonstrate competency in these programs, and we will pay them $150 for getting them done. And the reason we do that is because it saves us institute day time then. So then when we can actually have people face to face, we're not putting them in a computer lab and and teaching them how to point and click. It's been a really good thing for our system. This is by far, I think we've cleared 2,000 of these over the course of the last like 3 or 4 years. So, I know that was a lot, and at the end I have a link at the end of this presentation. I have a link to some of those things, and I think one of the things that I just want to kind of give you a taste of some of the things that we've done to retain, because our retention has gone from like the mid 70s to the 90s now, where teachers just simply don't leave our district. And that's because we've kind of followed that concept about building from our identity, which all comes about those habits. So anytime we think about recruitment and retention, that we have to build habits that stack on top of that identity, that we can't put things in that feel like a one-off, but that are really not connected. It all has to be connected for it to work. And so when people come to me with an idea, the first thing I ask them is, how is it connected to our identity about how we want to interact with students within the classroom, how we think about supporting our staff members? And if it doesn't, it's a really easy conversation for me to say, no, you need to adjust it and get it at least a little bit more connected to what we're trying to do and what we believe. And it's really helped us kind of police ourselves, because in education, there's not really anything that's a bad idea. So we like to say yes to everything, but the problem is that when we're scattered and everything's kind of not on that bullseye, then we get distracted, we can't support it, and everything just kind of does an okay job. When really, if you connect them all, that you can really move your system pretty fast and pretty effectively. So that's my challenge to you, is really, I always like to add these things with some kind of challenge, is that really think about your recruitment and your retention strategies. Do they really work together? Do they reinforce what you believe is a school district? And do they reinforce the concept that you have to invest in your biggest expense, the people that you're hiring? So, like I said, you know, I know that was a really quick 30 minutes, but at the end here, I did put some resources just so you could see some of the things that we've done as a school district. You can kind of see it outlined, spelled out more clearly than probably what I articulated. And then obviously, if you have any questions, I have my email address up there. And I love talking about this stuff, so I talk about it whenever I can. So please feel free to reach out.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Brent. I really loved all the ideas and the innovative ways that you are recruiting and retaining your teachers and all aligning to your identity. So thank you so much for sharing that. Just to finish things out, here at the Van Andel Institute for Education, we offer different levels of support. You know, obviously retaining our teachers is really important. We want to give them that support. So please feel free to reach out to us and we can help you with many of those needs. And also, because you are on this webinar today, we do have an opportunity to win a free lunch and learn. Right there, yep, there's a survey. So once this webinar is closed out, you'll get a survey. You fill that out, very brief, and we will make sure your name is put in that drawing and for that free lunch and learn. And of course, we also offer different options and opportunities for your teachers. So check us out at vaei.org and our thank you page. And I just want to thank Brent again. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. And everyone on the line, really appreciate taking the time to hear about some really creative and innovative ways to retain and recruit your teachers. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.